Welcome back to TalesFlix, where every story has a lesson and every ending is a new beginning. We believe in the power of sharing our experiences to help each other heal and grow. Before we dive into today's story, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Today's story is about family, rejection, and the incredible strength it takes to build a life on your own terms. As you listen, think about this. Have you ever been through something like this? If you have, you are not alone. Now let's begin. On the day of my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, I received a text message that no son should ever have to read. I wasn't welcome. So, instead of driving to their manicured home to smile for the cameras, I opened the gate to my brand new $10 million ranch in Montana and started making different plans. My name is Leo Vance, and I grew up in a small town in Georgia where everyone knows your family name before they know yours. My father was a man who ran things, at home, at his business, and in every space in between. My mother's job was to make sure the windows were clean and the curtains were drawn whenever the family's quiet disagreements turned into loud ones. I learned two things growing up. Silence was the price of peace, and some people only love the version of you that fits neatly into the story they've already written for themselves. My older brother, Marcus, fit into that story perfectly. He was born with our father's confident handshake and our mother's easy smile. He was the heir apparent to the small chain of local businesses that kept the Vance name painted on awnings across 2 counties. When we were kids, I was the one who could fix a leaky faucet or sketch out a floor plan from memory. But Marcus learned how to stand beside Dad at county business luncheons, talking like a man who had never once been wrong in his life. By the time we were in high school, people called him the future. If they called me anything at all, it was the quiet one. I left Georgia the week after graduation with a single duffel bag, a well-worn tool belt, and a stubborn belief that a house could love a person back, if only someone cared enough to make it whole again. I took any job I could find: demolition, drywall, roofing under a summer sun that made the air taste like metal. I slept in a tiny studio apartment above a tackle shop, and then in the back of my pickup truck when the landlord doubled my rent. I learned what relentless moisture does to support joists and what unchecked greed does to business partners. And I learned that if you keep your head down and work hard enough for long enough, sometimes you look up and realize you've actually built something. The first house I ever flipped was a little shotgun-style home with a collapsed porch and an old oak tree out front that seemed to refuse to die. I rebuilt that porch into a promise, sold the house, and bought 2 more. There were seasons when the numbers on my ledger bled red and seasons when they sang. Through it all, I kept my mouth shut and my work honest. Georgia gave me my foundation, but Montana offered me a canvas. It was a land that ran farther than the eye could see, with buyers who wanted privacy, sky, and a piece of quiet that no suburban subdivision could ever offer. The deals got bigger and my crews grew. I made my share of mistakes and paid for every single one of them. Then, one morning, 6 weeks before my parents' anniversary, I signed the final papers on a sprawling ranch west of Bozeman. It had a stone house with a wide, welcoming veranda, old pine trees that cast lacework shadows on the ground, and a river that cut through the property, sounding like running glass. I bought it for them. I had this perfect fantasy of walking my parents through the front door, handing them the keys, and saying, "This is what I built, for us." That fantasy shattered with a single text message. It came from my father's number, but the words felt like they were typed by Marcus's fingers. "Leo, for the 50th, we're trying to keep things simple. Immediate family only. Please understand." I stared at those 3 words until they blurred into an ugly smudge on the screen. Immediate family only. As if I'd been living on a distant planet all these years, instead of being the one who wired the funds to help them replace their roof last spring. As if blood came with bylaws and I was in violation of a clause I'd never been allowed to read. I didn't reply. I just let the phone grow heavy in my hand while the sounds of the Montana evening filled the room. The wind whispering through the pines, the gentle click of the ceiling fan. Memory is a cruel thing when it wants to be. It served me a highlight reel of moments I hadn't asked to see. Me at 8 years old, proudly bringing Dad a crooked birdhouse I'd made in shop class, only to watch his eyes slide right past it to the evening newspaper. Me at 16, showing Mom a detailed sketch of a starter home I designed on a piece of notebook paper, her smile small and worried, as if she hoped I'd choose something safer, something smaller. Me at 22, standing in the back of the room at Marcus's promotion dinner, listening to Dad give a toast to a son who never gave us a day of trouble. I set the phone down and walked outside. The crisp Montana air tasted like pine and distant rain. Across the yard, my truck wore a skin of dust from 1,000 miles of county roads, a testament to a confidence I had earned mile by grueling mile. I thought of the ranch house, how the main room opened onto a long lawn that looked like it was made for wedding vows and second chances. I'd imagined us all there after the anniversary party, having a quiet dinner on the veranda. I would have handed Dad the deed to the guest cottage and watched Mom's face light up as she walked the garden path. That had been my story. The text message told theirs. I went back inside and scrolled up through our message history. My dad's last message before this one had been a simple thumbs-up emoji after I'd arranged to have their HVAC system fixed back in May. Before that, a photo of him and Marcus at a ribbon cutting for a new storefront. There wasn't a single question about my life, just occasional requests followed by the polite, detached thanks that came with compliance. I felt something like grief, but it was sharper, colder. It wasn't grief for what I had lost, but for what I had finally stopped pretending I ever had. My phone buzzed again. A separate message, from a number I recognized before I even saw the name. Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years. Heard about the anniversary. Hope you're okay. Sarah had once believed in my sketches, right up until her parents stopped nodding along. When their approval of me cooled, so did hers. I watched her text sit there, pulsing on the screen like a small old ache. Then I made a choice. It wasn't a choice that involved her or my father or anyone who needed me to be smaller so they could feel comfortable. I opened my contacts, skipping right past the family group chat where my number was never pinned. I scrolled down to the people I had actually built a life with. The crews who showed up in the freezing cold and the blistering heat. The neighbors who trusted me to fix their roofs. The realtor who never once asked me to bend the truth. The pastor who conducted funerals for families who couldn't afford to pay. The young teacher who bought her first home because I'd waited 6 months for her to save up her down payment. And the cousins my family had stopped inviting to holidays after they married into the wrong families. I typed out a new message, feeling my shoulders relax as I finally found my own voice. Change of plans. I'm hosting a gathering at my place in Montana this weekend. Bring whoever you call family. No speeches, just good food, good music, and an open sky. Let me know if you can make it. My thumb hovered over the send button. The cicadas outside began their evening song, a sound that briefly took me back to Georgia. Somewhere in that town, Marcus was probably practicing a toast about legacy and tradition. I let the image fade like a passing cloud. Then I looked at the text from my father one last time. I read the line about keeping things simple, and I felt the first clean, deep breath I'd taken all day. I hit send. The responses came in faster than I could have ever imagined. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing like a hornet's nest that had just been kicked. Old friends, former coworkers, neighbors from both Georgia and Montana. People who had shared sweat, stories, and kindness with me over the years texted back with pure excitement. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Tell me what to bring. Leo, it's been too long. We're on our way. The more replies that flooded in, the lighter I felt. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one hoping for an invitation. I was the one extending it. But as the RSVPs piled up, so did the memories of what had led me to this moment. You don't just decide to throw a rival party against your own parents' 50th anniversary without a lifetime of subtle cuts and quiet dismissals leading the way. Every Thanksgiving where the best seat was saved for Marcus. Every Christmas toast where my accomplishments went unmentioned. Every single time my father introduced us with the same stinging phrase, "This is my son, Marcus, and his brother Leo." The truth is, I had built my empire in the quiet. When Marcus expanded the family businesses, his face was on billboards. When I signed my first $1 million property deal, no one back in Georgia even knew, because I hadn't posted a single thing about it. My father taught me that silence keeps you safe. I just took that lesson and applied it differently. I used silence as my shield, and my success as my proof. Still, even as I started making plans for the weekend, I couldn't escape the sting of that message. Immediate family only. It rattled around in my head like a loose screw. I wanted to scream back. Wasn't I immediate enough when I patched your roof? When I loaned Marcus 10 grand that he never bothered to repay? When I sent flowers every Mother's Day, even after Mom stopped returning my calls? That night, I drove west toward my ranch, my truck loaded with supplies for a gathering that was quickly becoming bigger than I had ever intended. I watched the rolling hills of Georgia fade in my rearview mirror, the horizon widening as I crossed into the vast, open country. I reached my ranch as dawn was breaking over the mountains, the stone house glowing in the early morning light, the land stretching out in every direction like a promise I was finally keeping to myself. The first thing I did was walk the length of the veranda, running my hand along the cool, smooth wood of the railing. I imagined my parents standing there, my brother Marcus scowling in the background, Sarah pretending not to recognize the man she had once so easily dismissed. That image used to fill me with a deep, hollow ache. Now it just made me smile. This place wasn't for them. It was for me. By Friday afternoon, the guests began to arrive. Pickup trucks and dusty sedans rolled up the long driveway, laughter spilling out before the car doors even slammed shut. Old coworkers slapped me on the back, their eyes wide with awe at the property. My cousins, the ones who were rarely invited to official family functions, arrived with coolers full of beer and Tupperware containers filled with their best potluck dishes. Even my old high school shop teacher made the trip, shaking his head with a wide grin. "Leo Vance," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You never did stop building, did you?" The ranch pulsed with life. The smell of barbecue smoke curled into the big Montana sky. Music from a fiddle and a guitar drifted from the porch. Kids chased each other across the wide-open lawn. This wasn't a stuffy gala or a staged celebration. It was real, it was messy, and it was mine. But one face still haunted the back of my mind. Sarah. I hadn't replied to her text, but a small part of me wondered if she would show up. Late that evening, as a caravan of 3 cars pulled in, their headlights sweeping across the driveway, I saw her step out of the passenger seat. She had the same careful smile, the same nervous habit of brushing her hair behind her ear. For a fleeting moment, the teenage version of me who had been so in love with her flickered to life. Then I remembered that she had chosen convenience over conviction. "Leo," she said softly, walking up to the porch. "This place, it's incredible." I simply nodded, keeping my voice even. "It's home." She lingered, as if she wanted to explain herself, maybe even apologize. But just then, a few of my guests called my name, asking me to settle a debate about the best way to smoke a brisket. I turned to them, letting her words hang unsaid in the cool night air. I had nothing left to prove to her. The weekend unfolded in a way that felt like both a rebellion and a healing. Every laugh that echoed across the valley, every clinking of glasses, every off-key chorus sung around the bonfire under the vast, starry sky. It all worked to push back against the crushing silence I had lived in for so long. Photos were snapped and shared online, tagged with my name and the location of the ranch. By Sunday morning, my phone had more notifications than I had ever seen in my entire life. That's when the calls started. First one, then another, then a flood. My mom's number, my dad's, even Marcus's. They must have seen the pictures. Me smiling, surrounded by dozens of people they had written off years ago. Me raising a glass on a piece of land worth more than every business Marcus had ever inherited. I let the phone buzz on the porch table, leaving it unanswered. My guests were inside, laughing and eating breakfast, the music still playing softly. I just stared at the glowing screen, feeling no urge to pick it up. For the first time in my life, silence wasn't a cage I was trapped in. It was a choice I was making. And in that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about redefining what family truly means. The people filling my ranch weren't bound to me by blood or obligation. They were bound to me by loyalty, respect, and love that was freely given and returned. That made them closer kin than biology ever could. As the Montana sun dipped low behind the mountains and the porch lights flickered on, I poured myself a drink and raised it to the horizon. Here's to silence, I whispered to myself, and to finally being heard without ever having to say a word. Inside, my phone buzzed again. My father's name lit up the screen. I watched it glow, then fade, then glow again. This time, I almost smiled. The story of Leo Vance was changing. And for once, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. What an incredible story of finding your voice and your true family. It really makes you think about what's most important in life. We have a few questions for you, our TalesFlix community. Please share your thoughts below. What would you have done in their place? Who do you think was wrong here, him or her? Or in this case, Leo or his family? If you've ever had to start over, share one piece of advice for others. And finally, comment one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your stories and your wisdom help make this community a safe and supportive space for everyone. If this story touched you, please give this video a like. Your like helps these untold stories reach someone who needs to hear them. And if you believe that healing and new beginnings are always possible, don't miss our next story. Subscribe to TalesFlix, where every ending has a lesson.